If you have ever reached the end of a perfectly ordinary month, looked at your bank account, and felt a little sick because the money disappeared faster than your memory of spending it, I can tell you exactly what happened. You were not ruined by one giant mistake. You were bled by 100 purchases that modern life taught you to call normal. That is the first thing I want you to understand. Most people do not get financially trapped because they buy one yacht they cannot afford. They get trapped because they keep paying premium prices for ordinary life while telling themselves every charge is reasonable on its own. A meal here, a subscription there, a phone upgrade, a car payment, a trip they deserve. A brand name, a convenience fee. A nicer version of something they barely use. Each one looks harmless. Together they form a machine, and the machine is designed to keep you feeling modern, entertained, and just slightly too broke to ever build real freedom. That is the real story. The market is no longer just selling products. It is selling convenience theater, status theater, and identity theater at prices that no longer make economic sense for ordinary people. That is the first mechanism. I call it the normal life markup. A lot of things people buy today are not expensive because they became dramatically better. They are expensive because companies learned that people will tolerate absurd pricing as long as the purchase still feels socially normal. Fast food used to be cheap and low quality. Now it is still low quality and no longer cheap. That should offend you. If I am paying premium money, I want premium value. What people are getting instead is stale convenience at restaurant prices. And the real damage is not one burger or one drive through stop. The damage is repetition. A bad value repeated often becomes a major financial event. That is how the normal life markup works. It hides inside routine. People do not say, I am choosing a weak trade. They say, I was hungry. Of course they were hungry. That is not the issue. The issue is that they keep making the same overpriced decision because convenience has been marketed as necessity. The same thing happens in restaurants. There is nothing wrong with a good dinner. I like a good dinner. What I do not respect is a person paying luxury prices for ordinary experiences over and over while claiming he has no room to save. If two people can walk into a restaurant, eat one forgettable meal, and spend enough money to fund several days of groceries, then the question is not whether the meal was pleasant. The question is whether the trade was stupid. Most of the time it was. That does not mean never eat out. It means stop pretending repeated restaurant spending is financially invisible. It is not. It is one of the cleanest ways. Middle income people quietly torch the capital that should have become their emergency fund, their brokerage account, or their escape hatch from a bad job. That leads to the second mechanism. I call it the convenience tax. The convenience tax is what you pay whenever you hand money to a company because it saved you time, effort, or planning. Sometimes that trade makes sense. Often it does not. A meal delivered to your door, a coffee bought because you did not prepare, a subscription retained because canceling would require 3 minutes and a password, a cable package you do not need, a gym membership you do not use, a streaming service you barely open. Each one says the same thing. I did not want to think about it, so I paid. That sentence ruins a shocking number of balance sheets because convenience feels small in the moment and enormous in aggregate. People destroy their future not only by buying things they love, but by failing to question the things they barely notice. That is why subscriptions are so dangerous. A single monthly charge rarely looks dramatic, but most people do not have one subscription. They have an ecosystem of little drips pulling from the same pool of labor streaming. Cloud storage apps, memberships, gaming services, premium versions of things that used to be included, auto renewals for products they forgot they even bought. This is not spending anymore. This is unattended leakage. And unattended leakage is one of the most expensive forms of modern stupidity because it feels passive, which means people do not attack it with the seriousness it deserves. The third mechanism is more emotional. I call it the identity premium. This is where people stop buying utility and start buying signals. A new car, designer clothes, luxury accessories, branded electronics, status furniture, prestige vacations. the upgraded version of something ordinary just so it can say something about you. This is where the market really takes people apart, because once a purchase is tied to identity, the math almost stops mattering. A person does not say, "This shirt is wildly overpriced," he says. "This is how I present myself." A person does not say, "This car is a depreciation event on wheels," he says. "I work hard. I deserve this." A person does not say, "This bag is just leather and a logo." She says, "This reflects my taste." That is the identity premium. It is the extra money people pay to tell a story about themselves. And the cruelest part is that most of the audience they imagine does not care nearly as much as they think. Nobody respectable is measuring your character by the badge on your car or the logo on your sweatshirt. But people still go into debt to buy signals. That is one of the saddest trades in modern life. Not because nice things are evil. I like quality. I respect craftsmanship. I am perfectly happy to spend more for something that truly lasts or truly performs. But quality and identity theater are not the same thing. A durable pair of boots can be worth real money. A plain tee. Shirt with a luxury logo at 20 times the cost is not quality. It is insecurity with stitching, and the worst version of this identity premium is the new car trap. If you want to stay poor while looking successful, buying new cars every few years is one of the cleanest systems ever invented. The minute a new car leaves the lot, the decline begins. The asset gets humbled, and the owner tells himself it was worth it because it smells new, and his neighbors noticed. That is absurd. A car's first job is transportation. Its second job is reliability. Anything beyond that had better be cheap enough that it does not interfere with your future. Instead, people buy something that loses value aggressively, insure it at high cost, fuel it at high cost, maintain it at high cost, and then speak about it as though it were a sign of financial maturity. No, it is often the opposite. It is a declaration that appearance beat arithmetic again. That is the fourth mechanism. I call it the replacement treadmill. The replacement treadmill is the modern habit of upgrading objects long before their economic usefulness is gone. Phones, laptops, tablets, watches, furniture, kitchen gadgets, cars, home decor, anything that can be marketed as stale before it is actually obsolete. Companies discovered that they do not need to wait for your product to fail. They only need to make you feel left behind. So they release a slightly better camera, a thinner screen, a brighter display, a different shape, a few extra features you will barely use, and people respond as if remaining with the current version is a personal embarrassment. That is madness. A phone is supposed to serve you. It is not supposed to demand a renewal ceremony every year. A couch is supposed to hold your body. It is not supposed to justify financing. A kitchen appliance is supposed to solve a task. It is not supposed to become a monument to aspirational domesticity. Yet that is where modern consumer culture pushes people. It turns perfectly adequate objects into emotional liabilities by convincing you that usefulness without freshness is some kind of failure. That is how the replacement treadmill keeps turning, and every turn strips away capital that could have become real security. Now let me tell you where people get especially stupid travel. I like travel. I think experience matters. I think seeing more of the world can make you wiser, but I do not confuse value with vanity. A trip you can afford is one thing. A trip financed through credit card debt because you felt socially overdue for one is something else entirely. Too many people are buying theatrical freedom at the exact cost of actual future freedom. They post the beach, they hide the balance, they show the hotel, they ignore the interest. They tell themselves experiences are priceless. No, most experiences have prices. Some of those prices are foolish. That does not mean never go anywhere. It means stop acting like every vacation is sacred just because social media trained you to fear looking stationary. The same principle applies to furniture, home decor, branded household goods, and every other category where people now spend as if an ordinary life must be curated like a showroom. Here is a useful rule. If the item is not helping you earn, saving you significant time, lasting significantly longer, or delivering repeated deep enjoyment, then the burden of proof is on the purchase. That is adult thinking. Most people invert it. They assume the purchase deserves approval unless something stops it. That is why their money disappears. They are spending from permission, not from judgment. That leads to the fifth mechanism. I call it the decision default. The market has taught people to treat spending as the baseline and restraint as the special event. I think that is upside down. A rational adult should treat money as deployable capital. That does not mean a joyless life. It means every dollar should have to earn its place. Will this purchase make life meaningfully better? Will it last? Will it reduce another expense? Will it save time I value? Will it protect health, relationships, or earning power? Will I still be glad I bought it 6 months from now? If not, the dollar has better things to do. That is how wealth gets built. Not by never enjoying anything, by refusing to finance every passing urge, every insecurity, every convenience, every algorithmically induced appetite. Now I want to say something unfashionable. You can either look richer than you are or become richer than you look. Most people choose the first path. They drive the signal. They wear the signal. They post the signal. They subscribe to the signal. They furnish the signal. They vacation the signal. And because all those signals cost money, they never get around to building the thing they wanted the signals to imply. That is the real tragedy. Status spending is often a substitute for real progress. And substitutes are expensive. The truly wealthy person is often not the one performing wealth most aggressively. It is often the person who quietly refused the overpriced normal life long enough to let retained capital snowball. That is the sixth mechanism. I call it the anti-signal advantage. The anti-signal advantage belongs to the person who can tolerate not looking maximal. The reliable used car instead of the financed vanity object. The good coat instead of the logo coat. The paid-off phone instead of the annual upgrade ritual. The canceled subscriptions instead of the digital clutter bundle. The home cooked meal instead of habitual restaurant leakage. The ordinary furniture bought sensibly instead of financed lifestyle défacor. This person rarely looks exciting, but over 10 years, the balance sheet begins telling a much more interesting story than the wardrobe, the driveway, or the camera roll ever could. That is how capital accumulates, quietly, without applause, without much social reward at all in the short term. And because the short term offers so much applause for spending, most people never stay on that road long enough to see how powerful it is. Now let me make something clear. I am not telling you to live like a monk. That is childish advice. I am telling you to stop paying premium prices for mediocre value and calling it adulthood. Buy what truly matters to you. Spend where the return in usefulness, joy, or durability is real. Keep some pleasures, keep some beauty, keep some fun. But do not lie to yourself. If you are eating expensive convenience multiple times a week, replacing devices that still work, financing depreciating furniture, maintaining subscriptions you forgot about, and dressing insecurity in logos, you are not curating a good life. You are funding a machine that knows exactly how to keep you comfortable enough to continue and broke enough not to escape. That is the whole game. And the way out is surprisingly simple. Question anything that has become normal. Track where the money actually goes. Kill the subscriptions and habits that live below your level of awareness. Keep things longer. Buy used more often. Prefer utility over identity theater. Prefer quality over branding. Prefer ownership over appearance. Prefer future leverage over present performance. That is what actual financial maturity looks like, not consumption. Discernment. Because in a world where almost everything is marked up beyond what it deserves, your ability to say, that is no longer worth my money becomes a superpower. And that superpower compounds. Every dinner not mindlessly outsourced. Every device not prematurely replaced. Every payment plan refused. Every logo purchase abandoned. Every treat yourself moment tested against actual value. Those dollars do not vanish anymore. They stack, they invest. They become runway, they become optionality, they become the exact form of freedom most people keep trying to fake with consumption. That is the final irony. The people buying the most visible version of the good life are often trading away the invisible conditions required to actually enjoy one. and the people quietly rejecting overpriced garbage are the ones building the margin that later makes a truly good life possible. That is why I do not ask whether something is expensive. I ask whether it is still worth it. Most of what people spend money on today is not, and the faster you learn to say that without shame, the faster your money stops disappearing into other people's profit models and starts building your own future. Instead,